You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium. Available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the Byford Dolphin incident. So it's over to you now, Mark, for this week's thrilling episode.
The Byford Dolphin was a semi-submersible column-stabilised drilling rig operated by a Fred Olsen Energy subsidiary called Dolphin Drilling, which was registered in Hamilton, Bermuda, drilling seasonally for a variety of companies within the British, Danish and Norwegian sections of the North Sea. It was equipped with the most advanced drilling equipment of the time and originally met strict levels of certification under Norwegian law, though in the later years of its existence it was in fact banned from any Norwegian waters. The Byford Dolphin was able to manoeuvre using its own engines and was also able to counter-drift the ocean currents, but if it was to be used for any long-distance relocation, it had to be moved by specialised tugboats. Unfortunately, the Byford Dolphin rig was also the site of several serious incidents, most notably an explosive decompression in 1983 that killed 4 divers and 1 dive tender, as well as badly injuring another. The Byford Dolphin rig was eventually scrapped in 2019. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this underwater episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a psychic medium, a ufologist and a true crime buff. And just to give a better idea of who I am and what I do, every Monday night I do a podcast on the various subjects under the Unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters and all sorts of paranormal phenomena, which also includes true crime, unsolved crime and missing people. So if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any other of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the disastrous story surrounding the Byford Dolphin incident. And this week's necessary disclaimer: this story is a tale that sadly involves people dying through misadventure and some graphic details of exploding body parts, so it may prove upsetting to some. You listen at your own discretion. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, does actually sound worse underwater. So, let's swim back to the theme of this week's podcast. During the first part of this podcast, I'm going to give you a bit of a potted history regarding both the North Sea and the Byford Dolphin rig itself. So, according to Wikipedia, the North Sea lies between Great Britain, Denmark, Norway, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium and France. It is classed as an eperic sea, or a continental body of water which is exceptionally large, on the European continental itself, connecting to the Atlantic Ocean through the English Channel in the south and the Norwegian Sea in the north. It is more than 970 kilometres or 600 miles long and 580 kilometres or 360 miles wide, covering an area of over 570,000 square kilometres or 220 square miles. The coast of the North Sea itself is a popular destination for recreation and tourism in the bordering countries, and a rich source of energy resources including wind and wave power. It also hosts key North European shipping lanes and is a major fishery. The North Sea has featured prominently in geopolitical and military affairs, particularly in the Northern Europe from the Middle Ages to the modern era. The North Sea was the centre of the Vikings' rise, and the Hanseatic League, the Dutch Republic and the British each sought to gain command of the North Sea and thus access to the world's markets and resources, and during both World Wars it was Germany's only strategic outlet to the ocean. Dolphin Drilling Holdings Limited is an offshore drilling rig company that has its headquarters in Aberdeen, Scotland, United Kingdom, with its main subsidiary Dolphin Drilling AS located in Sandnes, Norway. On a quick interesting side note, AS is an abbreviation for the Norwegian term, here we go, Askjeleskap. Something like that, yeah? Which means it is a stock-based company. And to be honest with you, after looking at how it's spelt and trying to figure out its pronunciation, I'm not surprised they just call it AS for short. Being a limited company means that the owners cannot be held liable for any debt beyond the stock capital. The abbreviation AS is commonly used in Norway and other Scandinavian countries. In 1965, the AS Acre Drilling Company Limited, or Dolphin Drilling, was established, with the company offering services for the offshore industry within offshore drilling. And in 1976, Fred Olsen Co. acquired Acre Drilling Services and renamed it Dolphin Services AS. In 1997, based on Dolphin Services AS, the company Fred Olsen Energy ASA was formed. And in 1998, its remotely operated vehicle division was sold to Stolt Comic Seaways, which is now named Subsea 7. In 2003, Dolphin Well Services AS was sold to PSL Energy Services Limited. In the December of 2018, Fred Olsen Energy ASA was renamed Dolphin Drilling ASA, and in the June of 2019, Dolphin Drilling filed for bankruptcy. However, all was not lost, because a debt investor called SVP Global acquired more than 90% of the company's debts and transferred its operating subsidiaries to a New Jersey registered holding company called Dolphin Drilling Holdings Limited. And shortly afterwards, the international headquarters of the company, Dolphin Drilling Holdings Limited, was moved to Aberdeen in Scotland, UK. And finally, in the May of 2022, it was announced that the Cyprus-headquartered oilfield services company SD Standard ETC had acquired a 25% stake in Dolphin Drilling as part of a $10 million USD deal. The Byford Dolphin was originally built as a deep-sea driller, and it was the first in its class of the highly successful Acre H3 series. It was originally designed by the Acre Group and completed at the Acre Verdal shipyard in 1974. On a short but interesting side note here, the Acre Group is a Norwegian industrial investment company with ownership interests concentrated in oil, gas, renewable energy, green technologies, industrial software, seafood and the marine biotechnology sectors. The Byford Dolphin itself had an overall length of 108.2 metres, or 355 feet, a breadth of 67.4 metres, or 221 feet, and a depth of 36.6 metres, or 120 feet. It had a maximum drilling depth of 61 kilometres, or 61,000 metres, and it could operate at a water depth of 460 metres, or 1,500 feet. As a drilling rig, the Byford Dolphin was equipped with advanced drilling equipment and was originally met with strict levels of certification under Norwegian law, although, as I mentioned earlier, in later years the Byford Dolphin was banned from ever entering the Norwegian waters again. One of the impressive things that the Byford Dolphin was able to do was that it was able to manoeuvre across the North Sea with its own engines. However, if it was going to go long distance locations, it had to be moved by specialised tugboats. After this first short break, in part 2, we will look at the deaths, accidents and incidents that happened to some of the workers whilst working on the Byford Dolphin.
This show is brought to you courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times, and over 16s only, please, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could and has taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective offers. And why not download the app, available on both iOS and Android for only $3.99, to keep up to date with what is coming up at the centre.
Thanks for listening to Mark's Unexplained World. If you are interested in parapsychology, quantum sciences, and true encounters with the other side, you may wish to visit the Weird Walk Home. That's my show on YouTube. Also, stay tuned, because After Dark with Tilly and Mark is creeping your way in June. Additionally, if you are interested in weird sciences, you may like to purchase my brand new book on Amazon. That would be Weird Time by Tim R. Swartz. It features lots of strange explanations and encounters with time from myself and other notable names like Lon Strickler and more. Thanks for listening.
In the early morning of Saturday the 5th of November in 1983 at 4 a.m, while drilling in a Frigg gas field in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea, 4 divers were in a diving chamber system on the Byford Dolphin's rig deck that was connected by a trunk or a short passage to a diving bell. The 4 saturation divers were British 35-year-old Edwin Arthur Coward, British 38-year-old Roy P. Lucas, 29-year-old Bjorn Glavier Bergersen, who was Norwegian, and 34-year-old Truls Hellevik, who was also Norwegian. These 4 men were assisted by 2 dive tenders named William Crammond, a British 32-year-old, and a man called Martin Saunders. And a couple of interesting side notes here before I go into the details of the incident. Saturation divers are professionals who delve into the depths of the sea that go as deep as 152 metres or more. They do this so they can service any equipment on the undersea pipelines or offshore oil rigs, with it being considered as one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. And unlike any other professional divers who spend a couple of hours underwater before going back to the surface, saturation divers may take as long as 28 hours on a single job, staying in a chamber that is not only very cramped, but also with a high-pressured atmosphere. And a diver's tender is a professional who supports and assists divers on their tasks. The job responsibilities of the dive tender include operating equipment such as winches, derricks or cranes, conducting routine maintenance and repairs on diving equipment, helping to check the equipment and make sure it is securely put on, continually ensuring the diver's umbilical safety during water entry and exit, and lastly, always being aware of the diver's depth and location. At the time of the accident on the Byford Dolphin, decompression chambers 1 and 2, along with a third chamber which was not in use at the time, were connected via a trunk to a diving bell. A diving bell is, of course, a rigid chamber used to transport divers from the surface down to the depths and back up into open waters, usually for the purpose of performing underwater work. The most common types are the open-bottomed wet bell and the closed bell, which can maintain an internal pressure greater than the external ambient. The connection made by the trunk to the diving bell was kept sealed by a clamp operated by the 2 dive tenders, William Crammond and Martin Saunders, who were both also very experienced divers. 2 of the 4 saturated divers, Edwin Arthur Coward and Roy P. Lucas, were both resting in Chamber 2 at a pressure of 9 atmospheres, or otherwise known as ATM. The diving bell with the other 2 saturated divers, Bjorn Glavier Bergersen and Truls Hellevik, was then winched up after a previous dive and then joined to the aforementioned trunk. Leaving their wet equipment in the trunk, the 2 divers, Bjorn Glavier Bergersen and Truls Hellevik, then climbed through into Chamber 1. You keeping up?
Yes.
Good, because there is more. You see, the normal procedure for this operation would have been:
Number 1.
Close the diving bell door, which would have been open to the trunk.
Number 2.
Slightly increase the pressure in the diving bell to seal the bell door tightly.
Number 3.
Close the chamber number 1 door, which was also open to the trunk.
Number 4.
Slowly depressurize the trunk until it reaches a pressure of 1 atmosphere.
And lastly, number 5.
Open the clamp to separate the diving bell from the chamber system. The first 2 steps of the procedure had been completed when one of the dive tenders, William Crammond, mistakenly opened the clamp that was keeping the trunk sealed before one of the saturated divers, Truls Hellevik, had closed the door to the chamber. This resulted in both chambers being instantly decompressed from 9 atmospheres to the ambient external pressure of 1 atmosphere. The air then rushed out of the chamber system with tremendous force, jamming the interior trunk door and pushing the diving bell away, striking the 2 dive tenders, and as a result, all 4 divers were killed instantly, along with one of the dive tenders, William Crammond, leaving the other dive tender, Martin Saunders, with severe injuries. A medical investigation was conducted on the remains of all 4 of the saturated divers. The most notable finding in 3 of the saturated divers' remains was the presence of large amounts of fat in the large arteries and veins and in the cardiac chambers, as well as having intravascular fat in the organs, especially the liver. Sorry about that. See, well, I'm not a doctor, can't you? This fat was unlikely to be embolus or embolic, but must have precipitated from the blood on site. On an interesting side note, an embolus is an unattached mass that travels through the bloodstream, which can create blockages. When an embolus occludes a blood vessel, it is called an embolism or embolic event. There are several distinct types of emboli, including blood clots, cholesterol plaque or crystals, fat globules, gas bubbles and foreign bodies, which can all result in distinct types of embolisms, or embolisms I should say. During the medical examination, the post-mortem suggested that a bubble formation in the blood denatured the lipoprotein complexes, rendering the lipids insoluble. And these now insoluble lipids are more than likely what stopped the blood circulation in the bodies of the 3 men. Lipids are a broad group of organic compounds which include, amongst other things, fats, waxes, sterols and fat-soluble vitamins. The functions of lipids include storing energy, signalling and acting as structural components of cell membranes. Lipids also have applications in the cosmetic and food industries and in nanotechnology. It was determined that during the medical examination, the 4th diver died instantly from gross dismemberment when the blast forced his body out through a partially blocked doorway to the chamber. An investigation by forensic pathologists determined that one of the saturated divers, Truls Hellevik, was exposed to the highest pressure gradient due to him being in the process of moving so he could secure the inner door. It was determined that he was forced through a crescent-shaped opening that was created by the jammed interior trunk door that just measured 60 centimetres or 24 inches long. And with the escaping air and pressure, it included the dissection of his thoraco-abdominal cavity, which resulted in a fragmentation of his body, followed by expulsion of all the internal organs of his chest and abdomen. All, that is, except the trachea and sections of his small intestine and of his thoracic spine. These parts of his body were projected some distance, with one section being found at least 10 metres or 30 feet vertically above the exterior pressure door. And on an interesting side note, and to give you an idea of how messy the crime scene must have been, the thoraco-abdominal cavity is the area of the body that includes both the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. The thoracic cavity contains the heart, lungs and upper body part of the esophagus, that's it, while the abdominal cavity contains the lower esophagus, stomach, intestines, liver and kidneys. The diving tender, who was the sole survivor of the Byford Dolphin incident, Martin Saunders, ended up with devastating injuries and was in a critical condition. After this second short break, in part 3, we will look at the investigation, the lawsuits and the legacy of the Byford Dolphin incident.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk. Or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
The committee investigating the Byford Dolphin accident concluded that it was caused by human error on the part of the dive tender William Crammond, who opened the clamp that was keeping the trunk sealed. The trunk door itself had a centre hinge design like that of a butterfly valve disc, which meant the door was rotated too far to the left, causing the rim of the interior hatch to lodge on the door opening. A short interesting note here, a butterfly valve is a valve that isolates and regulates the flow of fluid with a closing mechanism of a disc that rotates. This meant that the centre hinges, or the butterfly valve-shaped disc, left a crescent-shaped opening that was 24 inches or 61 centimetres across horizontally. This would have the similar appearance to a manhole cover being left ajar but still held in place. According to the investigating committee, it is not clear whether the dive tender, William Crammond, opened the clamp before the trunk was depressurised by order of his supervisor, or on his own initiative, or because of a total miscommunication. At the time of the incident, the only communication the dive tenders on the outside of the chamber system had was through a megaphone attached to the wall surface, and with heavy noises from both the Byford Dolphin rig and the North Sea, this made it very difficult to listen in on what was going on and what was being said. It was also found that the crew had been working for longer than 12 hours straight, so fatigue may have also had a factor. The investigating committee also attributed the accident to engineering failure. You see, the obsolete Byford Dolphin diving system, which was dated back from 1975, was not equipped with any of the following safety mechanisms, including fail-safe hatches, outboard pressure gauges, and an interlocking mechanism which would have prevented the trunk from being opened while the system was under pressure. Not only that, prior to the accident, Norsk Veritas had issued the following rule for certification.
Connecting mechanisms between bell and chambers are to be so arranged that they cannot be operated when the trunk is pressurized.
Therefore, requiring such systems to have fail-safe seals and interlocking mechanisms. 1 month after the Byford Dolphin incident, Norsk Veritas and the Norwegian Oil Directorate made the rule final and compulsory for all bell systems. On another interesting side note, Norsk Veritas, or DNV for short, is an international accredited register and classification society headquartered in Hovik, Norway. Norsk Veritas provides services for several industries, including maritime, oil and gas, renewable energy, electrification, and healthcare. Amongst the other former crew members of the Byford Dolphin and the Norwegian Oil and Petrochemical Union, or the NOPEF for short, some have come forward and claimed that the investigation into the incident was just a cover-up. They claim that the commission investigating the accident did not mention in their report the irresponsible dispensation on vital equipment that was requested by Comex, a French company specialising in engineering and deep diving operations, and the diving section to the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate, which they claim played a vital role in the accident's occurrence. And they also allege that the Byford Dolphin accident was due to a lack of proper equipment, including clamping mechanisms equipped with interlocking, which would have made it impossible to open while the chamber systems were still under pressure, outboard pressure gauges, and a safe communication system, all of which the former crew members claim had been held back because of dispensations by the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. The North Sea Divers Alliance, formed by the early North Sea divers and the relatives of those who were killed in the Byford Dolphin accident of 1983, continued to press for a further investigation, and in the February of 2006 they managed to obtain a report that indicated the real cause of the incident was faulty equipment. Claire Lucas, who was the daughter of one of the saturation divers, Roy Lucas, said, and I quote,
"I would go so far as to say that the Norwegian government murdered my father because they knew that they were diving with an unsafe decompression chamber."
The families of the divers eventually received compensation for the damages from the Norwegian government, 26 years after the incident. This terrible tragedy does give us a reminder of how dangerous saturation diving is, and why it is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, with each diving operation conducting a rigorous and extensive risk assessment. The Byford Dolphin was one of the worst oil field disasters in history, which led to sweeping changes in the North Sea and in commercial diving safety worldwide. Some oil rigs are now even equipped with special hyperbaric lifeboats that can transport saturation divers away from a hurricane or fire without having to bring them back to the surface pressure first. Today there are redundancies built into every procedure to both eliminate human error and or faulty equipment.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 107, we are going to be looking at the Pepsi number murders. Pepsi number fever, also known as the 349 incidents, was a promotion held by PepsiCo in the Philippines back in 1992, which led to riots and the deaths of at least 5 people. The grand prize-winning bottle caps were tightly controlled by PepsiCo, with only 2 bottles having that day's winning number 349, printed inside the cap, which had already been produced and distributed. However, before the contest was extended to add new winning numbers, 800,000 regular bottle caps had already been printed with the winning number 349 instead of just 2.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. The pronunciations of those silly names and places was all mine. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes, Denise Poolar and Tilly Treadwell from the Weird Walk Home podcast. With special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley. And, of course, a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast, but if you know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, including true crime and unsolved crime and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I will see what I can do. I will also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember, guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by the basic copyright of Mark the Medium.